I am an arborist, but what does the word arborist actually mean? Is it anybody that works with trees? Is it a logger? Is it a person that cuts down trees? So I went to Webster, the dictionary, and I looked up the word arborist. I wanted to see what the definition of arborist was in the book. And it said to me, a specialist in the care and maintenance of trees. Well, that's me. I take care of trees. Does that include people who plant trees? I think so. You know, that's a specialist in the care and maintenance of trees. It got me thinking a little bit about it, and I've cut down thousands and thousands of trees. Mostly it's because they're dead or declining, or there's a justification for it. But you know, sometimes I cut down trees that I wish I hadn't cut down. I think, you know, that was a nice tree. I hate to make way for a shopping mall or something like that. But in the same breath, I've also planted a lot of trees. I can't say I've planted thousands of trees, but I've planted hundreds of trees. And every time I plant a tree, it gives me something to pay attention to. Whenever I drive by the tree that I planted years ago, I remember it, and I see it. I say, I planted that tree, and look at how it's doing. So this next video is a little bit about planting trees, and it's in an unusual situation because we removed 6 trees that were growing between 2 driveways. And the management company said we have to put new trees back in exactly where the old trees were. That's not easy, especially if they're reasonable sized trees. So I'm going to kind of go through this video. It might be a little bit boring, but I think it's a valuable bit of information on how you can get away with grinding out sufficiently enough so that you can replant in the same location and end up with good results. Yeah, Lucy and I are planting trees today. We're planting crepe myrtle trees in between the driveways because they're a small species that doesn't get too big. They made the mistake of planting sycamores. These are still very young trees, and they've started to crack the driveways and lift the cement. Here's a couple of crepe myrtles that are a little bit more mature. These are the same age as these bigger sycamores, which would have been a better choice. They did some odd planting procedures. When they put these trees in between the driveways, they put root barriers all the way around the tree. You can't see it on this one, but you see the size of this tree. This is a sycamore. In no time, this driveway is going to be lifting and cracking and causing all kinds of problems. So throughout the whole complex, the decision maker in the beginning made this incredibly stupid decision to plant a species of tree that turns into a giant. I have honestly seen these trees with trunks in excess of 6-foot diameter trunks and over 100 feet tall. Now they're not going to grow that big in these constricted areas, but they're still going to fight to survive. So this is the last of 6 that I'm putting in now. I'm doing 15-gallon trees, and the sycamore trees were in here before. We cut those down and they were ground out just about 12 inches below. But in order to plant, I've got to regrind and go down deeper. And I want to show you this. This is the plastic root barrier that they put in all the way around these trees. So what that meant was that as these fast-growing sycamore trees developed, the first thing that happened, in essence, they kept these trees in a pot. The bottom was open, so there was drainage through, but there was a surround, and the roots went around and around and around and created this big mass. Because this entire area, it was just solid wood. It's still solid wood down there. I'm not done grinding. All this down here, look at that. It's all solid wood down there. The whole area is just solid wood. So generally, I don't like to plant a tree where another tree was, but they're insisting upon it. So because we're doing a small species of tree, we can probably get away with it, but you have to be very careful. When you plant in an area where there was a stump before, you have to remember that this isn't soil, this is wood. Eventually it'll turn into soil, but as this stuff degrades and decomposes, it'll burn the roots of a young plant. So you've got to get all of this soil, all of this sawdust mixed with soil out of here and replace it with at least 6 inches all the way around of additional soil. Like I said, eventually this will decompose and it'll become suitable for growing, but in the next year or two it's going to be a real problem. So you have to create an environment that's going to work. You plant a tree in raw wood and raw sawdust, you're just going to they're going to be calling you back to replace it because it'll be a mistake. Just like these stupid mistakes, sycamores. They're good trees, but they got to be in the right spot. So what I've been doing is I've been going around the complex and digging up dirt from other areas that I can use to backfill around this. So I'm going to keep grinding and grinding and grinding, and hopefully I'll get down to the dirt. But I'm going to take the majority of this sawdust and move it out of the way. Now it's important to recognize that sawdust and wood chips are great as a mulch. Mulch sits on top. They're not worked in with the soil. As the mulch sits on top, it will decompose and it'll enhance the soil, but you don't want to plant directly into it. So I'm going to take a lot of this stuff, this sawdust here, and put it around the tops of these trees on the surface of the soil when I'm done planting. Alright, I'm continuing to grind. I'm using the Alpine, and you can see that this root barrier completely encapsulated the tree. They basically put the tree in a cage all the way around, and consequently the roots that would have normally spread out evenly wrap themselves up into this massive big ball of wood, and that's what I'm dealing with. So not only do root barriers not work, they make the future planting for a replacement tree much more difficult because they have a tendency to encapsulate the wood. All the roots get all encapsulated within the confines. Then it breaks out. Then it goes and does its damage. But root barriers do not contain roots, and the roots always get out. They go over, they go under, they go through, every which way, and I see it time and time and time again. So if you're going to sell your clients on root barriers, be honest about it. You know, if they ask you if they work, they don't. So I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to keep grinding and grinding and grinding until I get a suitable planting environment. And I'm going to put this in the ground. I'm going to make sure that the top of the soil is level with the grade. You don't want it too deep, you don't want it too high. And once I get that in the middle, I'm going to bring in some dirt from other areas and surround this hole. But I got to get all that plastic out of there because that'll just be a future problem for the roots of the crepe myrtle. As you can see, I'm still hitting lots of wood down there. So this job is turning into a real pain in the ass. Now when you plant the tree, always take that tight nursery stake off when you plant it and restake it. The stake should never be touching the trunk. So we can certainly put 2 stakes in here and pull this up and make it so that it'll actually move a little bit, because it's that little bit of movement that helps the tree to develop taper and strength. If you keep a tree permanently and rigidly constrained, then the top goes taller, but it doesn't build up any strength on the bottom. It needs some movement. It needs a little bit of wind. And the tags that are on here, it's okay to leave them on there, but loosen them up just so they don't get embedded in there. If you leave them loose on there, they'll fall off eventually. It shows it was our tag. So we got one more tree to stake up with 2 stakes.